I think myself, personally, I think music, without music, I don't think there'll be anything. You have to have music. And I think, like I say, rock and roll will be here when I'm gone, and it'll be here forever. You'll never change it.
You gotta know how to twist it. Oh, it go like this. There is only one, and I'm the one.
Everybody went there. You see Cary Grant in there dancing, you know? I mean, Stone.
Everybody was fucked up on something.
Take it, Jack, boy, what you gonna do?
It is such a historic and career-starting venue. I mean, it's got such a history of all the bands that played here. It's such a part of rock and roll history.
You thought, wow, the Whiskey A Go-Go. This is where all the great live albums were made.
Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side.
This was school for Jim, you know, and then he graduated.
Come on, baby, light my fire. What is happening and how have you been?
The go-go dancers in cages. It was pre-porn. It was amazing.
The idea of go-go dancing to Procol Harum music is pretty bizarre. I can't.
There were a lot of guys saying, oh, you know, I've screwed 27 girls and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, yeah, and 27 girls have screwed you.
Woke up one morning, half asleep.
It was almost perfect, really. It had just had a lovely, lovely vibe about it.
Oh, I guess you.
The mantra was, good music is good music, and I want good music here, and good people here.
Make me a deal and make
Anyone that's cool's got to be there, you know, especially in rock and roll.
It was a rite of passage for bands. I think everybody wants to say that they played there.
This place has had the greats.
I like the bar business. You talk to people every day, time goes by, your life goes by, which has gone by, and that's life.
strange brew, killing what's inside of you. She's a witch of trouble.
In 1963, the club scene in the USA was facing a crisis. The dinner and dance lounge clubs of the 40s and 50s were dying out. Club owner Elmer Valentine saw the writing on the wall and was looking for a new style of club to buck the trend.
Well, the lounge era on the Sunset Strip pretty much ended by the late 1950s when Ciro's closed in about 1957 and the Macambo closed in 1959. You know, it was the jazz era, and I'm talking bebop, straight up beatnik environment. Out of the beatnik environment came a little folk club, came the Unicorn, right next to where the Whiskey would eventually open up. So there was really fantastic music up on the Sunset Strip in the late 50s, better than in the 30s or 40s. Hank Ballard had written the song The Twist, and that was the new dance craze where you didn't dance together, you didn't do the swing dance or the rockabilly style dancing, you started to dance separately from one another, and the twist was the craze of 1960, 61, 62.
Elmer Valentine already ran a small lounge club on the Strip and realised the twist was taking off and decided to import a European-style club. And in January 1964, he opened the first discotheque in America on Los Angeles' famous Sunset Strip. The Whiskey A Go-Go became an instant smash.
When you come to the city of Los Angeles in 1964 and you see all the press, it's pretty much about Elmer Valentine running the Whiskey A Go-Go.
He had sold a club named PJ's, which later became the Starwood on Santa Monica, and went to Europe just to take a break.
And they were stumbling upon a night spot called Whiskey A Go-Go, and they liked what they saw there, and they thought this would be a good idea. Let's bring this environment to Hollywood and turn it into a little twist club.
Elmer got that in Paris. That's where he saw it. He brought it here.
Mario grew up on the mean streets of Chicago, taking his first job from an infamous Chicago character.
I worked for Al Capone's brewery. I sold beer. That's the end of it.
At the tender age of 19, Mario was drafted into the army and shipped out to fight in the D-Day landings in Europe.
I was in 3rd Army, General Patton. 2.5 years I spent on the field, not in a hotel, but on the field. At Normandy Beach, D-Day, yeah. Never forget it, and I don't care to talk about it.
Elmer's new venture was taking off, but with money regularly going missing, Elmer called up his old friend from Chicago to help with running the club.
He did a good job of it, but he just couldn't run a club. He's my dear friend. I'd do anything for him, but he could not run a club.
It was a Bank of America. It was owned by an old colonel in Roanoke, Virginia. Mario later on came in as a partner. Eventually he became more powerful in buying in more pieces.
They had more rhythm and blues. You know, J.J. Cale had a gig on Sunday afternoons, and so Billy Lee Riley, who had been on Sun Records, he recorded Flying Saucers Rock and Roll with Billy Lee Riley and his Little Green Men. He was a house band at Whiskey A Go Go in 1964 when Johnny Rivers started to play at the whiskeys that were opening up in other parts of the country.
Well, we had Johnny Rivers there for a year. He kept that place going, I mean, packed with the Clark Gables, the Marilyn Monroes, all the movie stars. Every night it was a party there. And they used to, people get in line to get in there. That's how the whiskey got started.
The club had a unique attraction, caged dancing go-go girls, an attraction that kick-started the go-go craze that swept the West Coast.
It was originally a go-go cage right up there, another go-go cage on that other beam. That's why that beam's behind me.
Well, we had cages in there with girls dance between sets. And we used to have 2 shows a night, the same group, but 2 shows. So 9 and 11 o'clock or 11:30. And they went along pretty good. And the girls, of course, would dance in the cages and spin records. And that's a go-go.
Time magazine, within a couple of months, started doing something on the discotheque craze, and Julian Wasser came to the Whiskey A Go Go and took a bunch of photographs. And that photograph of Whiskey A Go Go in Time is what really set the pace for, oh, this is a new trend, and then suddenly you started seeing go-go printed everywhere.
I got a 70-year-old woman living next door to me. She used to dance in a cage at the Whiskey in the 60s, you know. And now she's just a dear old lady with white hair, you know, it's like amazing.
Suddenly, the West Coast saw the youth embrace the new beat culture with a combination of surf dudes and the San Francisco beatniks. A new scene began to emerge.
Everybody was looped, everybody was experimenting. Those were the turbulent 60s. We had Vietnam, we had free love. Drugs were introduced. It seemed to fit quite well in the industry for some reason.
This symbiotic change happened in 1964 for a few reasons all at once. The Beatles coming out was a whole fresh idea, number one. California had just experienced this big trend of surf music with the Beach Boys and Dick Dale and Jan and Dean, and Phil Spector was also recording out here.
It was that level of electricity, that excitement of almost the beatnik generation crossing over into electronic music. It wasn't acoustic anymore. They were plugging in electric, and the sound was changing.
Well, I saw Love. You know, I was outdoors looking in at this group, and they're wearing suede vests and Nehru jackets and paisley shirts and skin-tight clothes with their crotch hanging out. It was like, okay, this is different. This is not Johnny Rivers.
It was very exciting. It was the birth of rock and roll.
Arthur Lee wrote a song called Maybe the People Would Be the Times, or Between Clark and Hilldale, that appeared on the Forever Changes album. And as Arthur said on stage several times, like, this song is about the Whiskey A Go Go, the way it was then.
Across the street, I'm at the Slop Affair, and here they always play my songs.
Arthur Lee, one day he come in, he had all his hair shaved off his head. What happened to your hair? He said, you know, hair that ain't gone tomorrow. What a fucked up guy. But he was a good guy. He was a great guitarist. He knew that guitar like no tomorrow. And I hate to see him die.
Love was very interesting to me. A, an LA band like the Doors, but B, a black band. Color aside, these guys were so far ahead of their time. They were brilliant.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear.
But it wasn't just musically that the times were changing. the hippie culture came into a direct clash with the more conservative elements of the American establishment.
You know, there was a time where you had hippies walking up and down Sunset Boulevard, and the old, I think it was Mayor Sam Yorty at that time period. You'd have to ask Mario, but I remember him distinctly. And there was a great resistance to not only that culture, but people of color.
It was very much a them and us situation. I mean, you have to remember there's a war going on.
We felt like we were part of a movement because the Vietnam War was escalating. We knew it was wrong, and the whole country was split down the middle with for and against the establishment and the hippies.
And the LAPD at the time had a very, very bad attitude towards anything hippie. I mean, you probably know I think the authorities made the whiskey change its name to the Whisk at one stage because they said it was promoting alcoholism. I mean, it was very, very conservatism. So it was weird. It was very weird.
But one band were to become synonymous with the whiskey, The Doors. Their mixture of poetic lyrics and jazz blues infusion caught the mood of the kids.
Various groups, hippie cliques, came all the time, and I could see that they were attracted to our music. So I thought, oh boy, we're on the right track. All right, here we are at the front door to the Whiskey A Go-Go, and this is the spot where I would come to between sets in a dumpy little club we played in down the street. And Mario, the doorman, would be here, and I'd say, how's it going? And he'd say SOS, which was an abbreviation for same old shit. And I'd look over his shoulder and see Arthur Lee and Love playing in here, and I so much wanted to be in their band. The booker from the Whiskey saw us play, and we became the house band here for many, many months. Come on inside.
The story about how the Doors got into Whiskey A Go-Go is quite interesting because there was a place a few doors down called the London Fog, and Ronnie Herron, who was working at the Whiskey A Go-Go, had gone and see them and said, you know, why don't you come and work over at Whiskey?
Just down the street at the London Fog, Jim was had his back to the audience. He was so shy. And then he got here and he turned around and he started moving around and noticing people were noticing him. And at first I thought, this is not the next Mick Jagger, come on. And he was finding his own unique way. And so here, he was getting his footing as to what he did live.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend, the end.
Doors there when they came, Ray Manzarek, Jim Morrison. When they first came in there, it was like a carnival music. But I liked it. My son enjoyed it.
Listening to Doors rehearse drove me crazy when I listened to music. It wasn't their music was bad, obviously, it stood for itself. It was the fact that I got tired of it. I was setting up the room here, and literally, I had to hear them rehearse.
The Doors played here, and they opened up for $125 a night. You had 2 shows a night. The main act, you give him $500. So you get Fleetwood Mac, you give him $2,500 for 5 days. That was it, and he played 2 shows a night. So there was a lot of money being thrown around.
We used to play 3 45-minute spots with one band, so we used to get £6 between 4 of us. I mean, even given that it was a long time ago, that's not much.
At the time the Whiskey was in transition, there used to be cages on either side of the stage for the go-go girls. And so that was sort of the Johnny Rivers phase, and we sort of jump-started the psychedelic era.
Everybody was loaded. You could buy joints right on the street.
On the street, right in front of here, people were standing there not only smoking joints, but people, you'd walk by, and people would sell weed, acid here, and you could pick up what you wanted right out there.
We were already experimenting with psychedelics, which were legal then, and the times were a-changing.
We called them freaks, the original freaks. They were wild looking. They didn't dress to look cool. They were wearing this outrageous stuff and would dance frantically, out of their minds. because they were on acid every day.
I mean, everybody I knew was on acid then, you know. It was a new thing, yeah. But it was a good experience. I wouldn't have changed anything.
These were party animals. They were eating acid. I would work the floor and get tipped acid on the floor. Not unusual at all.
We played a lot of festivals and things in England and Europe with sort of the pretend hippies, you know, the weekend hippies and stuff. But to go to LA and meet the real deal was great. And these people were weird. I mean, they were like, wow, you know, they meant it.
When are you coming back?
I don't know, sometime next year.
I'm going to Hollywood next week.
Hollywood?
I'll see you at the Whiskey.
At the Whiskey? Right, there you go.
Bye-bye, Terry.
Bye.
Are these going to be in the movie?
And in the back of these booths where, you know, Steve McQueen would be sitting, or Warren Beatty, or Timothy Leary, or Andy Warhol.
In the late 60s, there were still people coming like Steve McQueen and all sorts of rich people from up in the hills who wanted to be hip, but got ignored by the girls because they didn't have long hair.
There was an evolution of music going on. You could hear a song on the radio by a band. You could go to his club and be this close to the song you heard earlier that day. It was very personal.
In 1967, Motown Records relocated to the West Coast and began looking for a new venue to showcase their artists. The Whiskey welcomed them with open arms, seemingly raised objections from the local councillor.
I had one time, we had a guy by the name of Ernie Debs. He was a city council member of Los Angeles. And they didn't even want blacks in that side of town. That I knew. And the neighbors didn't want them. I used to tell them, black, what's the difference? Black, white, green, I don't care what color he is. As long as you're a nice person, hey, we get along. So one year I decided, well, let me defy this guy. So I brought in all black guys.
When I arrived here was when we moved Motown from Detroit to Los Angeles. And we were received with open arms here. Hal Davis was the point man in the mid-'60s for Motown Records here, and they were based out of the Vine Tower building at Sunset and Vine right there. Mario welcomed the entire Motown sound in, and with it. And you know, there was still some resistance to acts of color.
In the South, you can't use a bathroom because you're black. Mario's stage was always open to anybody.
I think of Dick Clark and I think of Mario Maglieri because they believed in what sounded good. If it sounded good, I don't care if the person had 3 eyes and 4 tits. It didn't make any difference. They sound great.
We didn't care if they were black or white, Asian, China. We don't care. We go for good music.
I don't care what color the guy is. Person's a person. This guy Obama, he's gonna be your next spread. He's black. What do I care? Do a good job for me. Make me some money.
I don't know another club on the West Coast that had that kind of vibe. It was a family kind of, almost, I compare it to our Motown family, where it had a certain kind of vibe where you could come, you could relax, you could let your hair down, you could be a part of it, or you could be it, depending on what position you were taking from off stage or the audience.
Smokey Robinson, my God, you felt like you were floating through the room. A lot of times you would tone the music out and not hear it at all, okay? When it came to Vanilla Fudge or Cream, my God, I had to leave the building. But there was